Hello everyone, this is K.A. Stats, one of the creators and the writer of the White Vault podcast. Thank you for tuning in to this small additional episode that we're putting out today. It's less of an actual episode and more of a thank you behind the scenes peek at not only us as two of the main creators, but also one of our voice actors. This is a thank you for the support we've had on Patreon, for reaching 100 reviews and ratings on iTunes, for reaching one of our Patreon goals, for having great outreach and already over 50,000 downloads in just our first 4 episodes. So thank you very much, and I'll let us get right to the funny shenanigans of our small meeting in Reykjavik.
The following is a fun QA interview with the creators of The White Vault, including myself, Travis Vengroff.
Me, Caitlin Stats.
And I'm Eyþór Viðarsson, the voice of Jónas.
So we're here today, actually,
Stop
this
moving.
chair is... I'm in a very creaky chair. We're actually at Eyþór's over in Reykjavik, Iceland. We are not in Florida, our usual place. We're here...
We're free.
We're free. The curse is lifted, and we find ourselves here. So we're here with Eyþór, and I guess we're doing like a QA. We've got a couple of questions people have not asked us, but we decide we're going to answer anyway. Eyþór has a couple of questions. We have a few for him. And just a general hangout and maybe talk about some Icelandic scary ghost stories. Ooh. Before we get into the episode, we would also like to give a couple of shout-outs and thanks. We would like to thank David Cummings and the NoSleep Podcast. You guys are a fantastic show. If you're not familiar with it, it is serialized fiction horror podcasts. They are a lot of fun. And every story is completely different. You'll recognize voices like David Alt, the voice of Walter Heath, and Peter Lewis, the voice of Graham Casner. Additionally, we'd like to give a shout out to Deadly Manners. It is a murder mystery horror podcast that's a lot of fun. The people who are working, they work sort of with the people on No Sleep, but it's a different group of people creating it, but they're all in the same network. It is a fantastic show, and it is a lot of fun if you get a chance to check it out. We also would like to thank our squeaky chair. We also want to say a quick thanks to John Grills of Creepy, the Creepy Podcast. They did their 31 Days of Horror.
I listened to all of them.
Yes, literally every day in October, they made a new horror story for October, submitted by various people from the internet. One of which, Day 15.
I don't remember what
it's called Help Wanted, and it's by K.A. Stats, our very own.
So if you want to listen to more things that I wrote, I have a guest written piece for the Creepy Podcast.
With actually some really great voice acting and sound design as well. They also just got picked up by Bloody Disgusting, which is Congratulations, John and your team. We also would like to thank our sponsor, Klipsch Audio. Klipsch.
You can buy happiness. It's copper and black.
There you go. That's the phrase.
We also want to give a big thank you to all of our Patreon patrons. These are the people that help make our productions possible. Fool and Scholar Productions makes a bunch of different shows, the White Vault being one of them, the Liberty shows being one of them, and it's all very much to thank you to the people who actually support us doing these things. So
what you guys have missed, we've flown to Iceland. We're here now. We've been awake we didn't actually get any sleep, so we're a little bit more sleep deprived than usual.
We took a nap.
Also, again, thank you, patrons. You guys are amazing. We did take a nap. So we're on about 4 hours of sleep for the last 24 hours, I think. Maybe 28 hours. Maybe more.
We would have gotten an extra hour of sleep if I would have just shut up and gone back to work.
We had a fun...
No, we had good talks.
We had a great time with Eyþór here. We've been chatting up. So let's get right into it. So we have this show, The White Vault. You guys listen to it. You probably maybe have wondered a little bit about how it's created and the purpose of this episode.
Hi guys, just enjoy it.
Just to shed a little bit of light on the White Vault. So what is the White Vault? It's a. I guess everyone who's listening knows.
Audio drama podcast.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, you probably know.
If you're listening to this, you started on the wrong episode.
Start on episode 1.
Go back to episode 1.
It's scary.
Listen in order.
Eyþór, is this your first acting job, or are you already a very established guy we've just never heard of in America?
No such luck. No, you guys are actually my first. Not counting the White Vault, I actually had a small speaking part in Liberty. The second season, I think episode 6.
And 10.
Oh yeah. I had a voice in 10. Damn, I forgot about that. And you guys were gracious enough to extend a second offer for the character of Jónas in White Vault, and that's by far the biggest project I've ever been a part of.
So we do another podcast called...
for you.
We did. We have another podcast called Liberty. It's a sci-fi action adventure. We'll put a link in the show notes. And
Super good.
It's fun.
Listen to episode 6 of season 2.
Yes.
No, listen to the whole thing in order, guys. That, again, it's a story. You gotta listen in order.
Yeah, fast forwarding through. So what was it like with your first acting gig? Like,
To be absolutely honest, horrifying.
okay.
Yeah, sounds honest.
I extended my hand towards you when you were doing Liberty, and I recorded a couple of awful lines, and I put them on SoundCloud. And I then promptly deleted them after seeing that the views went up by 2, because I was mortified by my own recordings. But then later I actually got a reply from you guys, and you gave me lines, and I was absolutely terrified to record my lines. And it's... I've been scared the whole way through, and then they gave me a horror podcast to do on top of that, so I've been very scared the whole way through.
In like the last 3 days, we've gotten like maybe 8 compliments on the show, and some of them were particularly geared toward your acting. So you're like, and also from the editing perspective, because for clarification, no one on the show has ever met anyone else on the show. We all record.
We've met Peter Lewis, who plays Graham. We've met David Alt, who plays Walter. Now we've met Eyþór. And we're so the only 2 we haven't met are the women. We haven't met Cassie, who plays Karina, and we haven't met Lonnie.
Though Lonnie is like family,
yeah,
despite having never met her.
We've never met her in person, but I mean, she like sent she
and
she
him.
knows
We
our
haven't met
dogs.
him.
Oh, we haven't met him. See, I she doesn't have a character name, so I just consistently.
You don't consider her a person. But Hem actually does her own D&D podcast, The Lucky Die, and I listen to that. It's a lot of fun.
It's really fun. So if you like Live Place,
yeah, I love Live Place.
It's a really good one. But back on topic. So
what's the topic?
The topic of the day. So acting and getting involved in this show. So we don't record at the same time. Eyþór, you've got. Describe your rig.
All right. So I live in a small apartment, and in the apartment there's a little closet. And in the closet I shoved my desktop computer, and then I bought a microphone and just basically put it on the desk. Doing that is not enough. You get awful echo and bass, so every time I record I get a blanket and I drape it over myself and the microphone, and then I read the lines into the microphone.
How do you read the lines with I guess your laptop is the light?
Sometimes I print out the lines. Sometimes my sheet, the thing I drape over myself, is very transparent, so light gets through. And sometimes I've printed out lines, and sometimes I drape it over the TV screen itself. And at that point it becomes very toasty, very fast. So if at some points Jónas sounds exhausted and about to have a heat stroke. It's me. It's me. I'm about to have a heat stroke. And
it's real.
Well,
so
actors
genuine.
for Fool and Scholar Productions have a history of recording in closets.
Yep.
It's not the first time.
And you say your English is very good. Many people in Iceland speak English. I think almost everyone does to some degree. But you've read some of the words in text form, and then I guess what was it like experiencing them now, having to say some of our really awkward
that's
technical jargon written by Caitlin?
Anybody who has a second language has experienced this, especially anybody who just doesn't speak English. You look at words on the page and it says obnoxious, and you're just like, yeah, I know what that means. It means to be more than life and annoying about it. And then you sit down and you're going like, I find that you are being quite obnoxious. And then you just try to keep going into the next sentence because you don't know how to save that sentence. And you just, so there have been absolutely moments where I absolutely destroy words that should be simple enough. Travis was earlier teasing me with my pronunciation of the word ball.
It was just so funny. It wasn't that you pronounced it wrong. You did it fine, but then you said it like 7 times in a row.
Because I am not sure the first time I said it was right, so I just gave you enough to work with.
Then you went with like a southern accent. You're like, so it's like, you're Jónas, you're Icelandic, and all of a sudden like, bowl.
By golly, is there a ball in here?
That was a fun one.
Oh my gosh.
What was it like hearing your own voice?
I have I have recorded myself and I've done little YouTube skits and whatever and thrown them on the internet. So listening to my own voice was not something completely new to me. However, listening to my voice while intently trying to convey emotions was very strange to me. And I
do a great job.
Thank you. And there was a moment where the time period I'd been given caught up with me, and I had to record a bunch in a couple of days. There was a crazy moment where I'm just sitting there editing my voice for probably the 40th hour this week. After recording all the thing, and
so the tears are real.
Oh, they're so much more than real, Travis. I don't know what that means. There were moments where I just listened to my voice, and I honest to God thought to myself, I don't know how to do sad. Sad is not in my voice range. Sadness is for other people.
You have the luxury of saying sadness is for other people.
No, but it's been more than fun. It's been exhilarating to record for something like this, and then seeing it just absolutely taking off has been just crazy to me.
Yeah. You have fans now.
No, I don't have fans. You have fans who rubbed off on me. This is how this works.
So like when you go back to Westman Island?
Westman Islands.
Westman Islands, you'll be like a celebrity to the one person there who listens to the show. And
don't worry,
like
it feels the same where we are. It's like, oh, you make a thing? Yeah. What's a podcast? Oh, God.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, that's quite an interesting story, actually. But getting into a little bit more of it, Caitlin.
Yes.
So the White Vault, we were here in Iceland in March of 2016, and that kind of sparked the ideas for the White Vault. Mm-hmm. Explain.
I like the cold.
No. No, but like, what about Iceland got you thinking about the cold and things?
I mean, it probably would have been the same sort of feeling had we gone to Glacier National Park, but just getting out into a space where you can look out and see a mountain and think, oh, well, if there was something behind me, something evil chasing me, nothing would stop me from getting from here to that mountain except for the fact this place would probably kill me. It's cold. We were talking about this earlier. It's not just...
There are no natural predators in Iceland.
There's no natural predators here.
Nothing.
There's a fox. You guys have foxes?
It's called minks. I think they are just minks, and they're very scared, very afraid of humans. So
yeah. So there's nothing here that can hurt you, and the Icelandic people themselves are very nice. So I'm not expecting like an Icelandic serial killer. But
there have only been 2 in the entire history of Iceland. We learned today.
So it's just that the only thing here that can really hurt you is the island itself. It's a place that's both freezing cold and it'll kill you that way, or you could be like, oh, well, tomorrow, volcano eruption. Like, one way or another, you're living in a place that's both amazingly beautiful and then, like, it's Earth. It doesn't care. We talked about this earlier. Chaotic nature.
Yeah.
The same thing.
It absolutely does not care whether you live or die. It just keeps going.
It's like, oh, you fell into a geothermal pool? Yeah. It's a bloody geothermal pool.
So we were driving through Iceland, seeing the natural beauty of this beautiful country.
Oh my God.
We were listening to the NoSleep Horror Podcast, basically on loop the entire time.
It was not on loop, because that means we said the same one over and over again. We just queued up like
20-something
episodes.
Oh my God.
Hours of content. And we're listening to it over 10 days, basically nonstop while driving during all the daylight hours.
So it's totally not my fault that I got a horror story idea while here in Iceland, because I'm surrounded by a place that's inspirational and you're just feeding me horror.
We also almost got killed by one of the roads.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, the awful Tightlu road on the way to Búðardalur.
Yeah.
Yeah, why would you try to drive that on a
GPS?
Because the GPS said to.
Well, the plan on the GPS is you go sort of on the west coast, you head north, and it's like kind of a long scenic route, and then it's like, well, okay, the sun's going down, get home quickly.
Yeah.
And then it's like, take the shortcut. And the shortcut is...
The other horrifying one was...
like a death ride.
So the fjord that they've built a tunnel under?
Yeah, Hvalfjörður.
So we went under the tunnel to go up the first time, but then on the way back we were like, oh, let's drive around it. That was a mistake. You're so close to just being, I'm going to drive off the cliff.
Well, we've got a tunnel. Why are you driving the shitty road?
Because
We
it was
tried
supposed to be scenic.
Oh,
It was scenic, but it was also death-defying.
You're looking at the cliff from the edge.
Yeah.
Very, very close. And it's like 1.5 lanes. And
And there was like parts where it looked like there had been rock falls.
Yeah.
So there were a few rocks on the road, and we're like, "Oh, did that just happen, or is that is that going to happen?" Or
whether it happened just now is equally horrifying as it happened years ago and nobody cares.
no one picked that up. That's not important.
The main news here is garbage.
So
no, you guys get the snow plows out really fast.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have to. We're talking about it. It can literally shut down the city, the amount of snow that can fall in one night, and usually does. Like maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years. We go from 0 snow to literally you can't walk the walkways.
we don't actually know what the bad thing is by this point in the story, or what the bad things could be.
No, and I'm not giving any spoilers away.
We're not asking for spoilers, but nature being one of the forces that you've selected as being kind of a, as we hear a strange knocking from
Don't worry.
It's just that Icelandic serial killer
As
we
we-
were talking about.
He's running out of oxygen any second now.
Eyþór, secretly the serial killer. The second.
I'm actually the wife.
To clarify, there was a serial killer in Iceland who was condemned to death because they found him, and they accused his wife, and they said, okay, she's also in on this, so we're going to kill her too. They killed him, but they condemned her to death, but no one actually went through on the execution.
Just like,
So they voted for it, everyone was there, they voted, and they're like,
Of
all
course
right,
you should die.
let's go home.
let's go home and think about what we've done.
So she just kept living. Forever.
What was the question?
I'm sorry.
Until she became Eyþór,
Oh my god.
apparently.
What was the question?
So just in general, I was re-clarifying that you've got nature as being one of the real threats up there, a very real threat in the real world in Svalbard. Why Svalbard?
It's first of all, I was inspired by Iceland, but I actually really like it here, and I didn't want to write a story that made it seem like going to Iceland was going to kill you. So I was like, you know what, I'll write it in Svalbard because not a lot of people go there unless they're there for scientific or mining industries. And I eventually got to the point where I was like, oh, I really want it to be in a place with polar bears, and there aren't any here in Iceland. So I found the island of Svalbard, and it's got more polar bears than people. And you're required, if you leave the 2 settlements, there's 2 large settlements, it's Longyearbyen and Nilesund. And if you leave them, you have to be armed. It's like a requirement.
Also, there's no visa requirement to get into the country.
There's no visa requirement
so when
to
you
get
die,
to Svalbard.
they never find you.
Well, it's easy for companies to just hire on anybody they need because you don't need a visa to live or work in Svalbard. So if they're like, oh, you have a specialty we need, just come over here.
Really?
You can.
Yeah, without any sort of formalities or passports, assuming your country lets you leave. Like, I guess it'd be tough to get out of Cuba.
But so the setting itself, it was just a nicer idea to set it in Svalbard with polar bears and the horrible weather. Like, I spent about a week just reading articles about like snowstorms and glaciers and, oh my gosh, everything going on there. The geological creation of Svalbard.
So what's for those of us who are unfamiliar with your background, Caitlin, the writer of the show, what is your and creator of the White Vault? What is your background in general? Because it's a very science-heavy show.
I have a degree in archaeological sciences.
She says, rolling her eyes.
And I don't. No, I love I love archaeology, but I don't utilize my degree because it's more about like how to utilize the mass spectrometer. Oops. How to utilize the mass spectrometer, how to count glass shards in tephra. So things like that. And
When a volcano erupts, you have to count all the different like microscopic glass particles to figure out how old
See,
something
that's
is.
why it's bad to breathe ash because it's filled with tiny glass.
Oh,
It's
I
like-
thought it was made of little demons that give
It's-
you coughs.
Little glass shards.
It's demons.
But that was my project was, okay, here are a bunch of shards of glass in a little dish. Go count them under a microscope for
In like a 3-inch
5
dish.
hours. And it was like I had a whole box of them to do. And oh gosh. And you know what? You know what? My findings were still inconclusive.
And my favorite part of the story is she's like, normally you get 7 or 8 samples and like 1 or 2 have what you're looking for. So you have to like count them thoroughly. And then the mentor who was with her is like, you're really lucky. All of your samples have them.
Oh, good. So instead of it being like every slide only takes 3 minutes because I can find the few glass shards, it's like every single freaking one takes like a half hour because it's got 100 shards in it. Because they're like, oh, well, yeah, these came out of a volcanic lake. And I'm like, well, then what did you think was going to be there? Not volcano ash.
So you have a pretty good research background, because you have to do a lot of research to get a master's degree, and in archaeological sciences. And you have, I guess, how did you go about researching all the fields that make up the skill sets of the characters of the show?
Jónas was the easiest to write.
He's the company man.
He's the company man. So it has more to do with, like, oh, well, I'm just doing this because my company said go do this. Or...
You've got like a doctor, a medical doctor.
Yeah, I have a medical doctor.
Rosa.
I ask people who I know who are medical doctors. My dad is a medical doctor, so if I'm like, does this make sense? He's like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, good.
Most people only have one liver, but yeah, you're on the right track.
But I've only had to ask him like once about one thing. When Karina faints, and I wrote a bunch of the ox altimeter things.
Well, you also did a lot of research for your degree
geology and
on undead people. So you know a lot about like anatomy.
My degree on dead people?
Well, you yes. Like for archaeological sciences,
got bachelor's in corpses.
I just remember you holding a book and like you're going through all the different body parts. But then,
I was
mass graves was like the chapter you were on.
I was studying physical anthropology and like identifying skeletal remains and stuff like that. So he has this picture of me with my book open because I was doing my homework. This was years ago. I was doing my homework and he's over my shoulder and he takes a picture and I'm just starting the chapter on mass graves.
Cup of hot chocolate, mass graves, good light reading. Gotta keep it. And then we also have a geologist. How was that?
But now I know all the signs were there. All the signs were there. I was going to write horror.
So, geology.
The geology one was actually really fun.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. So, again, because I did work with tephrochronology and work with, like, speleothem dating and things like that, I had some of that information already under my belt. And then I was writing this for Karina, and I wanted to write Karina in a way where she stops talking out loud when she's about to get too technical, and she just makes them personal notes, because she's like, if I start saying this in German, and I start talking about my doctorate degree in geology, nobody here is going to understand or care. So the most detailed notes that she takes are just personal notes, and it's just research that I got to do about the actual island of Svalbard, which was really fun.
And the poor actress Kessie, who is actually from Germany, whose English is her second language, who is not she is not a geologist, has to go through these words. I don't even know if it's
her second language. It could be like her third or fourth language.
She's very talented.
But she's so talented. She's very funny.
And I'm getting her notes as she's sending me her recordings, and she's like, speleothems, what is this word? And she looks them up. She'll find a YouTube video of a professor who says speleothems in like one of their geology reports or a speech. The professor's from like the deep south. So, the first take that I get from her, she's completely in her German accent, and then she says speleothems. And it's totally straight-faced, not realizing what's happened. And I was like, Kessie, we have to re-record the line with the speleothems because the pronunciation was great if you were from the south.
Not German.
So we had to correct a few things, but she powered through a lot of those really technical notes that you heard in either the previous episode or the one that's to come. I can't remember.
The most difficult thing is actually what we were discussing earlier, writing for people who speak English as their second language and writing in a way that's natural for other people who don't speak English as their first language. So I can write Walter pretty easily, and I can write Graham pretty easily because he's English and then he's Canadian.
And there's a pronunciation guide for every one of those words. I have a
pronunciation guide, yes.
With the outposts and the Longyearbyen.
Yeah.
I really loved his hesitation. It was like, we just took a flight from Longyearbyen. Super genuine.
Just like, because everybody speaks differently. Syntax in Icelandic is different than syntax in Spanish or German. So the way that people speak is a little bit different, and that's been difficult. And I know that I've failed at some points, but I've had great actors and actresses who have been like, no, I'm not going to say it that way. I'm going to say it this way because that's the way it's supposed to sound. I'm like, okay.
We like had to change the name of a character because in Iceland you don't use last names.
We use last name, but you would never refer to somebody by their last name.
You don't say like Mr. or Mrs.
Absolutely not. That's just mad talk. we use the first name. It's just a simple thing. That's your name. Your last name is just the name of your father and gendered suffix.
Mm-hmm.
Look at me go! Yeah, you told me the word earlier. But yeah, the Icelandic language is structured very much differently than English, and you gave me a very short and simple sentence, something along the lines of, "It's obvious why I'm here," and Helga was correct. And I spent about 30 minutes rewriting that sentence in Icelandic, trying to make it just 2 sentences, not drag it out, not combine it into one sentence. And like the general feel of the whole thing, to keep saying without sounding like a absolutely broken Icelandic.
So the translation process was very genuine. Eyþór, you are Icelandic, you speak Icelandic, and you translated it to Icelandic. We had Sergey and my friends at the Russian magazine Mir Fantastiki translate our Russian into Russian for Kasner. We had Kessie, who is a native German speaker, correct the German that we sent her and turn it into true German.
And then we sent our Spanish translation off to
a friend in Mexico City.
Because we wanted Rosa to be from Mexico City, so we wanted it to be
Specifically
written exactly like someone from Mexico City would speak.
And for those of you who don't know, like, that's a very specific accent. It's basically the New York City equivalent or the Bostonian equivalent of like Spanish. It's not just Spanish, it's you're from Mexico City. So why an international team? What was your
it's fun.
But what was the
so much more interesting to have people from around the world with a bunch of different skill sets that have different backgrounds and can act off of each other. It's so boring when it's just like, oh, a bunch of 25-year-olds from America met in America and did American things. Like
America.
But then you can't have all those really fun pop culture references constantly throughout the whole thing.
I mean, I threw in some pop culture references because they're like watching old movies. So like Batman Begins, Sean Begins.
The underrated prequel. Sean Begins.
Starring Christian Bale.
Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, so things like that. Walter makes a reference to the Tomb Raider video games at one point.
I can't tell if I just edited that or if that was the one that just came out.
I don't know.
We'll find out.
You just edited it, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you just edited it.
Oh, okay, got it.
And that's okay though. But I throw in some, but I feel like I try to make them as appropriate as possible to where people are from. Like, Karina teaches Rosa how to say "Das ist der absolute Hammer," which is like a really old way of saying in German, "Oh, that's so cool," but it's like from the 80s.
That's
it's like,
tubular.
that's the absolute hammer, which is like, that's the absolute best, or that's the bomb, or whatever. And so it was a joke that she taught it to her, and then they make that joke. So I tried to make specific references because I want it to be more interesting. I want people to be like, oh, what does that mean?
Did you intend for it to be listened to by people from different countries?
I would love for it to be listened to.
But was that the intent, like when you're writing
Yeah,
it? Like
I
there's
mean,
these little inside jokes in different languages.
Imagine
different cultures, culturally.
I'm going to use Iceland as an example.
Go on.
Imagine, do you know of any podcasts, audio drama-wise, that have any Icelandic at all? Is there one that's just all Icelandic?
To my knowledge, not a single one. I know of a single YouTuber who came to Iceland.
Okay.
Who came to Iceland?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
That's
I feel...
it.
So, but then also like your cursing in Icelandic is we put a lot of time into these curses. Yeah.
They're intricate to a certain degree, but they are very Christian when you really break it down. It's all about hell and curses and.
We were talking about how we Google things and like they keep coming up. I'm sitting there and I'm Googling like Icelandic curse words, and then my computer is like sending me like, oh, you want to go to Iceland, but also
For advertising on
did
Facebook.
you look up horrible words? Only the horrible words. Like you didn't look up how to say hello or anything.
Clearly.
You looked up how to like say, oh my god, one of them is like, you are a troll of something. Like,
Ooh.
I looked up an entire page and they were all like, oh, you're a...
This is
a lot of poop talk. Like you're like a
Oh yeah. Ski tightless, basically poop heel.
Yeah.
Implying that he's of lower status that comes from the barn, so it would fucking ski tight. Yeah. Also, Icelandic cursing has been vastly infected by English cursing.
Yeah, we heard some earlier. I was like, I know at least one of those words in that sentence you just said.
perfect Icelandic sentence and just like F-bomb in the middle. It was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, so I do want to write because there might be people who here in Iceland would be totally into listening to audio dramas, but maybe they want to see somebody that isn't just a bunch of Americans or a bunch of Brits doing anything. So, I have a character that I can connect to. I'm going to listen to it. Oh, it's pretty good. He's still alive. Let's keep listening.
As the show's producer, she's like, okay, we're gonna get like maybe a guy from Finland. And I'm like, oh god, I don't know anyone from Finland at all. This is.
I understand now. I wrote that wrong. I probably should rewrite his nationality.
We'll get another lady from Sweden. Like, what do we know in Sweden? I don't know any voice actors in Sweden.
I know people in Sweden, but they're all Chinese.
So we have these little challenges where Caitlin's like, the radio sounds.
I want to write this international world, and we just don't have the actors and actresses to fill it.
She writes these very intricately detailed radio sequences in the episode, and they're very scary. But, the sound, it's like, oh no, it's a very inhuman sort of scream. Like an animal? No, like an inhuman sort of scream. Like, okay, I'll get right on that.
Let me just get my inhuman.
I'll get my inhuman revved up, set it to 7. We'll channel Ring Wraith too.
But no, I also wanted to include like the character of Rosa, because there are not a lot of like Spanish speaking representation in non-completely Spanish. Like I know a Brazilian, that's not Spanish, it's Portuguese, but a Brazilian audio drama. And there's a bunch of other audio dramas out there that are just in specific languages, but there's not a lot of representation of non-English speakers in English-speaking audio dramas.
That's clearly because the Spanish people just have their own podcasts, right?
I suspect. Only speaking a little bit of Spanish. See, I haven't gone out and listened to the diverse array of Spanish-speaking podcasts.
Well, you gotta get on that. You got all this free time here in Iceland.
To learn Spanish. Come to Iceland. Learn Spanish.
You'd be so bored you learn Spanish.
No, it's not boring here. It's wonderful.
Are the Northern Lights out this time of year in November?
Definitely. It just as long as you're here after August-ish, that's when the sun starts setting again, and then you'll get like pitch black darkness at the night.
Literally, sun does not set.
Yeah, we're looking forward to when we go out to the little cottage, because there's like none of the Reykjavik lights.
Oh, that's the best.
And we're supposed to be able to see it as long as it's like.
So we're like all good horror movies. We're going to a cabin in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere, in the wastes of the White, and we're going to be out there to write horror.
and go hiking.
And go hiking and edit.
So looking forward to that.
Edit the rest of the series, hopefully by the end of the week.
Watch out for the minks.
Oh, they'll get you.
Oh yeah, because that's scary when you come from alligator land. And we have because where we are, we have wild boar.
Wild boar will get you. Cougars will get panthers. Various wildcats.
Oh man!
I saw a lynx
once. We were
once.
at Mayaka. Remember when we were at Mayaka? Mayaka is this not national park, it's a state park near us. And there are gators. They're huge alligators. They will just lay in the middle of the street, and you have to wait for them to move. You can't go out. You can't go out and be like, shoo shoo, alligator.
And they hiss at you. They're like,
oh yeah,
like cats.
Yeah, there was this one time when we were driving there. I don't know if I was with you. I might have been with my dad. And we were driving by, and there's this alligator on the road, but he's like parallel.
Okay.
So you can drive around him. But this lady gets out of her car to take pictures, and there's people out there taking pictures because they don't move particularly fast.
Yeah.
But she's out there, and she's got a little chihuahua on a leash, and I'm looking at her going, "Did you bring a snack? Like, what are you doing?"
It's her offering, clearly.
So what I'm saying is, Not too scared of the little minks.
Yeah, you've seen chihuahuas. That was the takeaway from that story, right?
Yes, chihuahuas are scary.
I have a friend who was attacked by chihuahuas. Speaking of animal violence and just animals in general. So
What kind of a segue was that? I'm sorry, finish.
So we have trying to get the sounds of polar bears. Whether or not they'll be in the story or just be background will be decided. But we're trying to get recordings of polar bears. There are no recordings of polar bears. So apparently National Geographic just fakes them. So they'll use grizzly sounds and they'll pitch them down.
Oh, don't say that out loud. They'll come after you.
Oh, no.
All that Nat Geo money coming at you.
Or they'll put music on top of it. Because when you're out there in the wilderness and you record a polar bear, like all the free stuff out there is just wind. You just hear the wind and you're like, whoa.
First of all, you're very close to a polar bear.
Understandably, you don't want to get
Probably
close.
too close to a polar bear.
So in January, we're hoping to go to the Utah Zoo and meet up with Nora, the polar bear, to record polar bear audio. She's actually she's animal famous. So if you're in the animal world and you know like animals that are famous, she's actually
Yes,
there's a whole
my
movie
dog
about her.
knows all about her. Won't stop raving.
But she's really big in the animal world. There are only, I think, 6 or 8 polar bears in all of time that have been raised in captivity. She's one of them, and she survived. I think out of 5 that survived, she's one. And
So if you want to go, you can actually just Google Nora the polar bear, and you can see
or
videos,
the loneliest polar bear.
Or the loneliest polar bear, which
Sad
was another
videos.
video made of her.
Oh boy.
And you can see videos about how she was raised. And,
Her mother abandoned her, basically.
Yeah, so she physically can't go back into the wild, or she's never been to the wild, so they can't release her. And we were able to get in touch with them, and hopefully they'll help us get us some polar bear noises.
The pains we go through. I've actually contacted every zoo in the world that has a polar bear, and they all said no except Utah, because Utah is just, they're on par. Also, National Geographic, BBC,
Polar Institute or Arctic Institute?
the International Polar Bear Institute.
There's an International Polar Bear Institute.
They're out of Canada, yep. And they might work with us. They're currently, right now is the active season, so they're all doing live feeds, and they're in the fields. They can't really do emails because if they look away for too long, they'll be eaten by a polar bear. And you're hearing them describe it yeah, we're putting up our surveillance equipment near the den. Don't want to get too close though, because if they're under the ice and you're under the snow, and you're not really sure if you get too close, where it is.
See, that was fun research. Finding out that polar bears do not hibernate unless they have a cub. Male polar bears do not hibernate. I did not know that. I thought, bears. All bears hibernate.
As we get into some more horror elements, you'll appreciate some of the other research that has come up that we can't mention yet, or it's a spoiler. But there's some fun stuff.
Do pandas hibernate?
I don't think so. I don't think they have a reason.
I think their metabolism is just so slow. They're in a constant half hibernation state.
Neither truly dead nor truly alive.
Yeah.
Completely
this is
unrelated.
A total diversion.
We've tangented. So getting us back on track, we're actually looking to adopt a polar bear from through the Institute at some point.
Adopt means you just sponsor.
Sponsor a bear.
Yeah.
For the record, I am against animal cruelty of all kinds. Please do not abuse your animals. Be nice to your animals and pet them from me. Say Eyþór says hello and pet your pet.
Yes. It's sponsored by Eyþór.
My name is Eyþór and I approve this message.
So what was it like hearing the episode with the other characters and the sound effects for you?
That was the best. It was so fun. I'll admit, I was panicking quite hard around the time the first episode was coming out.
This is gonna suck. This guy.
I ruined it. I ruined it for them.
Oh no, you didn't.
They're gonna have my voice, and I'm gonna be like, "Oh hey guys, I sure hope no polar bear come and get us, right? I'm from Iceland." I was so waiting for myself to destroy.
Mr. Meepseep's from hey everybody, look at me. With a little slideshow, because Jónas has we're really big into this old quasi 80s technology where he's got his slides on the next slide, and you actually made the click noise. You're
Yeah.
I had to cut that out for the recording, but that was cute.
I wish you had me kind of whispering it underneath the clicks. But no, yeah. Then the first episode came out, and I have a fucking 5-minute monologue in the thing where I explain the point of the mission. And I'm gonna be very frank here, and I've recorded that monologue probably 20 times. And yeah, you can be the judge of if the 21st time was worth anything, but I think it came out quite well, and I'm super happy with all the blending of the voices as new characters walk in. I'm quite surprised how similar, no, not similar, like all the quality seems to blend. I've heard projects where people sit in their different offices on different sides of the globe, and everybody has weird echoes and weird bass and stuff like that. And I feel
we've reached out to you and we said, hey, you had a little bit of like a tinny sound. Can we try and fix that? And we've done the same with our other.
That's how we got the blanket theory.
Yeah, that's how the blanket happened.
So we even though we don't record in the same room, we try really hard to like have quality control.
I will say the microphones are actually, they do sound noticeably different at first. So I created this custom equalization passes for each character. Yours is I don't remember what they are, but I know like Lonnie's, I have to cut some of the highs and boost a little bit more for the lows for hers, for instance. I think David Alt, I just do nothing because he's perfect. I don't even edit his audio. It's just it's even in sequence in the right times. I just edit around his audio.
He is the framework that you work around.
He knew the whole episode. His footsteps are already recorded in the background. It's not me recording the footsteps.
You already sent them season 2.
When you
hasn't been written yet. But...
when you did hear it, did you like finally feel relief? Like, oh, I didn't ruin it.
Yes. I felt a massive amount of relief. A lot of stress just kind of got pushed off me, and it got replaced with like I'm just gonna say it, a sense of like pride.
Accomplishment?
Yes, accomplishment. It sounded good. It sounded natural, and
sounded good. You did a good job.
Well, I will say, you were saying it was your 21st take. It was actually a combination of about 8 different takes.
Yes.
So and it's not a complaint. With a lot of what I do in the editing process, certain takes and certain words will just sound perfect. Like there's a delivery where you sounded crippled. Like you were giving a speech and you just sounded completely disheartened because someone insulted you or something. And it was the first time you read it, you like stumbled through it, but you were unsure of the word, but it sounded like if you cut out everything before the uncertain parts, it just sounds like you're really sad for like the last word of the entire part. So I steal that word and I'll combine it with another take where that sounds equally forlorn, and it gives now this really beautiful sad performance.
You did that with my first performance. In Liberty, I was playing an explosive dealer who had a drug problem. And you asked for like a...
You've gone up in the world.
And you asked for a voice that's like kind of skeevy and kind of gross, and it wasn't supposed to sound good. So I think this is called a trigger, where an actor chooses a word or a sound that gets them into the voice. And I had this little laugh I did that got me high and hit the right note. So I did this. Yeah, let's just do that. I did this little like the sound.
I remember that.
And this man, he grabbed the laugh and he shoved it throughout the whole conversation. It's everywhere, and not a single point line in the dialogue says skeevy guy laughs like a freaking creepo. So
you gave it to him, so he was gonna use it.
And some of those stumbles are like genuine stumbles in the recording, and they just sound so real sometimes.
Well, because I fucked up.
No, but like even in the White Vault, when people
he's a messed up character.
Up saying Jónas's last name, but the intention is for them to mess up saying Jónas's last name, but they didn't do it the right kind of mess up, but their real mess up sounds perfect. We're like, that blooper you thought was a blooper? No, we're using that. That's
gold, yeah. And then occasionally words get shifted around a little bit for similar reasons, just because it sounds so organic when people mess up. And I think in the most recent episode, there was a stutter or two that I just left in because it sounded like you were saying something and it just sounded much better.
Yeah, I think I know exactly the stutter. It's the scary smoothies.
Yes. Smoothies, yep. It was so good.
I don't say the M, but you can clearly hear the train of thought I had that was derailed by my inability to control my own face flaps.
I see like a dog with like the face, the pug.
Like big jowls.
Pug with jowls over the pug face.
Oh, God.
Kind of hiding there. So as we're in your country, we're here, we love horror stories, and this is a horror podcast. We thought it might be appropriate to tell a horror story if you had the time.
Sure. I have 2 stories for you.
Okay.
One's kind of short, and the other one's a little bit longer.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with the short one.
Let's do it.
All right. The first story is called Móðir mín kví kví, or Mother in the Fold Fold. It's a...
Two folds?
Mother in the Fold, comma, fold.
Oh, okay.
The story starts in the early years of Icelandic settlement. The story follows a young woman.
For what century is this, for those who are unsure?
Have fun finding out. I think 1400.
1400s-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a young farmhand, a woman who works at a farm, basically, and she gets pregnant. Now, the man, whoever he was, is never mentioned again in the story. So she performs a thing that is known in Iceland. It was never celebrated, do not take this lightly. It's called bearing out a child, where you take the child after it's born, wrap it in some of your clothes, and simply take it outside.
So, like death by exposure.
Yes.
Okay.
And it had a name, and later on it actually got fines and even death sentences around it. So don't think that this is a normal thing, but it occurred enough that we have a word for it, að bera barn út, or to carry a child out.
Okay.
Now the mother...
Not to the White Walkers.
No, that
not to break the...
No, that's the White Walkers are completely different thing. You need an albino for that.
Just to clarify, because the wall is here. You
Oh.
guys record Game of Thrones here.
Oh, they do record a couple of scenes here. Fun fact, one of them, the mountain, that broken arrowhead that the Hound talks about in the last season. Yeah, that is not where they showed it. That mountain does not belong in that mountain range. That's a Photoshop and a half, and it upset every single Icelandic person who saw it.
Sorry, So getting back to the wall, she's
Yeah.
not taking it to the Ice King, she's taking her child out.
Yeah, she carries the child out. Now, later the same year, there's a festival in her town. It's called the Vikuvaki. Now, this is after Christian settlement in Iceland, and a lot of merriment and dancing and all things, basically fun, have been forbidden. And and the Vikuvaki is one of the few times where people get to gorge themselves with food and then dance into the night. A small pyre is set, and mostly it takes place inside. Now, the thing about Vikuvaki is it is a kind of a nice thing, and this time it was being held inside in a hall. So she looked for her nicest clothes, and she figured out she had none, so she couldn't go to Vikuvaki. Now the day moves on, and it reaches the day of the Vikuvaki, and throughout the day she does little else than complain and tell her ire of her being stuck here, and that she can't go to the Vikuvaki. And as the day goes on and the sun sets, she goes out with another farmhand to milk the ewe. And when she gets there, they're milking, and she can't contain herself, and she looks to the farmhand and she says, I can't go, I have no nice clothes. And then from beneath the floorboards, a voice speaks. Móðir mín í kví kví, gráttu ekki því. Ég skal ljá þér duluna mína að dansa í. Roughly translated, the poem goes, Mother in the fold fold, no need to be sad. I will give you my cast-off rags. Them you can wear and dance.
So when she put the baby out, did she put it out in her best clothes at that time?
That doesn't follow the story, but that is an logical conclusion to reach. There are two versions of the story from this point, and I'm only going to tell the more simple one.
Okay.
She instantly recognizes the voice as the voice of her child she bore out. She screams to the farmhand, she screams to the ewe, and promptly loses her mind for all of time. That's the end of the story.
Oh, I like that. That's like a little Lovecraftian.
Breaks her mind.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you made a mistake, and then some, like, elder problem happened with your child, and then you went
This
crazy.
is the same year?
Yeah, same year.
Okay, so it wasn't like, 30 years later the kid might have grown up.
No.
and actually been there.
I
She
can't-
recognizes the voice of a baby.
I can't do a child's voice. If you go online, there's a really good child singing this little lyric.
We'll try to find it and put a link in the show notes.
Definitely do that. The other one I have is Jafnin og Myrká. which is a lot longer. So if you're tired already, go to sleep. And Djákninn á Myrká is roughly translated, no, not roughly translated, verbatim translated, the deacon on Dark River. And the story takes place in the north of Iceland, in Eyjafjörður.
Eyjafjörður.
Yeah, Fjörður. And the man is the deacon on Myrká, which is the Icelandic version. But I feel that it gives a little more flair to translate that one name. So I'm pronouncing it Dark River.
Okay.
Which is the name of a town. But yes, the story takes place in north of Iceland, again sometime around the 1400s. And there's a deacon there who has fallen in love with a woman called Guðrún. Now she lives across a mighty river called Hörgá in a town called Bægisá. She worked there as a maid for the priest. The deacon had a horse with a mane of grey, which he rode everywhere, and he called it Faxi, which is the Icelandic name for mane, which is not a very creative name for a horse, but it does the job. It so happens that shortly before Christmas, one year, the deacon writes to Guðrún to invite her to a Christmas party. Now, when as he is arriving, he sees that the weather is getting worse and worse. He gets to Guðrún, he tells her, "Hey, I want to invite you to a Christmas party." She says, "Yes, much merriment is had." He spends the day with her, and as the night falls, he starts heading his way back to to Dark River. As he reaches the mighty river, the river has become torrential and glacial. Something you need to know about a lot of the Icelandic rivers is that probably around 99% of Icelandic rivers are cast off water from melted glaciers up in the highlands, Hálendinu. And as it melts, it usually just creates water and it runs off. But strange or unique weather circumstances can break the ice and they'll drift down the water, leaving little icebergs from the size of a cat to the size of a car, drifting down the rivers. Now, he sees the river is impassable where he usually passes, so he decides to head further south to Yggdrasá, where there's a bridge. He gets to the bridge, and there the river is crashing against the bridge, and as he reaches the middle of the bridge, it gives out, plunging him and his horse to the icy depths.
Faxi.
No, Faxi. The next day, a farmer in a town close by wakes up, and as he's about to start doing his rounds, he sees a horse with a fax of mane, a mane of grey. A fax of mane of grey. A lot of Icelandic words in this one. With a mane of grey, wandering around outside his farm. It looks worse for wear. As he reaches the horse, his assumptions are confirmed. He had seen the deacon leave for Guðrún the day before, and he had never seen him arrive back. Seeing the Faxi as disheveled as it was, he follows down the river where he finds the deacon face down, with a mighty gas upon the back of his head. The farmer takes the horse and the deacon's body to Myrká, to Dark River, where he is promptly buried the week before Christmas. So it happens that the weather was so bad that not a single person passed between Myrká and the town Guðrún's from in the whole time. So Christmas Day arrives, and she sits waiting merrily. As night falls, a knocking is heard upon the house. I held myself back, man.
I saw you about to do it. I just had to. Sound effect guy.
A knocking is heard upon the house, and her mother leaves for the door. She looks out into the darkness but sees no one, so she returns and tells Guðrún. Guðrún laughs and says, "No, surely it is the deacon. You simply can't see because the wind is strong and the clouds are thick, covering the moon, leaving nothing to the eyes to see." So she leaves outside, and she sees a man upon a horse with a mane of grey. She believes herself that this is the deacon, and she climbs the back of the horse, and they ride off.
I've made a grave mistake.
To clarify, he has some cliff notes, and they're written on the back of a Dungeons & Dragons player's character sheet, and it's amazing.
Making this sound way nerdier than it has to.
Everybody here at this table plays D&D.
Yeah, we're all D&D people here, so
It's the best. Tell your friends. As she ran to the door, she put upon herself her thickest coat, But as she saw the deacon, she simply shoved one arm into one arm of the coat and hung the other one over her shoulder. She then climbs the horse and they ride off into the night. As they reach the mighty river, the horse jostles around, tossing the two passengers around a little bit, lifting the hat of the deacon. And upon the back of his head, she sees a mighty wound, and she can see the white of his skull beneath the hat. In that very moment, the clouds part, illuminating the river, and the deacon speaks. Mánin líður, dauðin ríður, sérðu ekki hvítan blett í hnakka mínum, garún, garún. Roughly translated, and with some creativity added to it, it says, the moon slides as death rides. Do you see the white upon my nape, garún, garún? There are two versions of the story from this point. One says that she was stunned silent and they rode off in peace. Another says that she grabs upon his hat, lifts it, and says, I see only what my eyes see. Either way, the rest of the trip is uneventful and passed in silence.
I'm on a horse with a dead guy. What do I do? None.
Taunt him! They reach the town of Myrká. God damn, Eyþór. They reach the town of Dark Lake. No, it's Dark River! Oh my god! They reach the place!
They get there!
Yeah! They reach the town of Dark River, and they stop at the gate of the cemetery, where the deacon steps off the horse and helps her down. He looks to her and says, Bíddu hér, garún, garún, meðan ég flyt hann faxa, faxa, upp fyrir garða, garða. Roughly translated it says, wait here, garún, garún, while I move, faxe, faxe, in beyond the fence, fence. As he said,
For clarification real quick, is the repetition of words common in Icelandic speech?
I'll tell you this as the end of the story.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. So, as he starts guiding the horse away, her eyes are cast upon the cemetery where she spots an open grave, dirt cast to either side of it. She braces herself against the town bell, the rope to the town bell, and as she does so, a hand grasps upon her coat's arm. So harshly and quickly it moves past her, it rips it right off. Luckily, it was the sleeve of the arm she hadn't put her whole arm in, tearing the arm of the coat off. The deacon runs past her, jumps into the grave, and the mud slides, closing the grave completely. Garún, paralyzed with fear, not knowing what to do, starts tugging on the town's bell, ringing it again and again until the men of the town arrive. They reach her, and she quickly tells them of her travels with the deacon, and they tell her of the funeral that was had 7 days earlier. Guðrún is given a place to stay, a warm meal, and a bed to sleep in. And as she falls asleep, the deacon appears at the foot of her bed. She screams out as he claws at her, and the man of the house runs in there. The deacon leaves, screaming, and leaves Garún alone. None slept in the town that day. Days passed, and every night Guðrún is accosted by the deacon, never getting a full night's sleep. 15 days passed until a magi from the town of Skagafjörður, just west of Myrká, arrives. He tells the man of the town that they must plow the biggest rock from the field and roll it to the town hall. He then waits at the gate of the town until nightfall. The deacon arrives and says, I am entering this town, Magi. The Magi cast some terrifying curse, pulling the deacon with him towards the town hall. There he performs a mighty exorcism, banishing the deacon into the ground, and rolls the rock on top of where he banished him. There the deacon still lies, waiting for anyone to move the rock. After that night, all slept peacefully in the town except Guðrún. They say she still does not get a full night's sleep. End of story.
Wow.
There you go.
Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah.
And I have questions. So,
Yes.
Magi, is that like, a cleric, or is that like a sorcerer?
The Magi. They literally say magician. I thought that sounded dumb, so I looked up synonyms for it.
Okay.
And it's because the word magician or galdramaður in Icelandic has a more old-timey feeling than what it has gotten in the English language.
White gloves, rabbit and hats.
Yes, top hats and all that. So I looked for a better word. We have also another word called seiðskratti, which is basically a potion demon, which I wish you guys had, but...
Tell us about them.
They're simply the alchemists of Iceland from the times yore. Basically the man who brewed the potion that healed the sick, the lame, and the blind.
Okay.
Surely he was just poisoning the people and then telling them they're better. Again, their name was Potion Demon, seiðskratti. But yes, you had one question.
The repetition.
The repetition. It is said that those who come back from the grave must always speak in rhymes. Now the word rhymes has a different meaning in Icelandic. Þula is it's basically they have to what's the English word for performing poetry, like the act of performing it?
I mean, like slam poetry?
Slam poetry.
No, that's different. Slam poetry is a different type of poetry.
No, it's not slam poetry, but basically in Old Icelandic, and this was something I think, now if we have any Icelandic listeners, they're going to bite my head off if I'm wrong, so I'm going to add a prefix here. Eyþór is not 100% what he's talking about here. He's doing his absolute best. In the old times, it was very customary for when you were making declarations and trying to be bigger and stronger than everybody around, you spoke in little verses. Something that could be easily quoted, written down, put some stones.
Okay.
You'd banish somebody and you'd spoke it in a verse.
Speaking quotes. Quote me on this.
Yes, yeah. You can quote me on this. Was what they were doing. And they say that the ones who come back must speak in verses.
So this is like Wayne June from Darkest Dungeon, a faint hope blossoms.
Oh, what's the crazy one?
Pride precipitates the dizzying fall.
Give me a second. Excessive size has no intrinsic value unless
inordinate exaggeration
be considered a virtue. God, he's so good at that. It's like 3 thesauruses in a dictionary had a baby. But yeah, the rhymes are a reference to the idea that ghosts must speak in rhymes.
This stone, is it also there?
I could not find any information about the rock still being there. And
That's possible.
As far as I know, the town hall is also gone. But I know the gate is still there, though the bell was taken down like 1980, like annoyingly recently. It was. I read a little paper about this because we were telling the story, and somebody went back and he fact-checked the story, and there was a deacon in Darklake, and there was a Guðrún, and there was a mighty storm the year 1408 on the 27th of December, which totaled a bunch of houses, laid waste to the countryside, leaving not a single tree standing.
To clarify...
I thought it was just the Icelandic people making houses.
Icelandic people have few trees because they used most of them to build houses.
That rotted away, so now we live in mud caves.
And the other interesting thing is genealogy is a huge part of Icelandic culture. So you always know the name of your parent and then son or daughter, basically. Yeah. So being able to trace that lineage is actually very doable in Iceland.
Yeah, but there's one thing that you didn't catch because it's not your native language, which is sad because it's the best part of the story. You see, when the deacon addresses Guðrún, he calls her Garún. He mispronounces her name. And there's a reason for that. Guðrún is 2 words, Guð or Rún. Guð is the Icelandic word for God, and Rún is runes, as in carving runes. So her name is Godruns in English.
Okay.
That's a pretty sweet name.
It is said that the dead cannot speak the name of God, so he must mispronounce it when he speaks to her.
So he calls her Garún. Does that have a meaning?
No, he's simply mispronounced. Yes, babbling.
I'm not able to...
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That is really cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of neat elements to this story that are inspiring.
Can I have the papers?
Oh, yeah, you can keep the papers.
They're completely in Icelandic. She's staring now at Icelandic text that she can't really read.
No, but I'm looking...
But a cool character sheet on back. Yeah, but thank you. That was really neat. It's a genuine Icelandic folklore story.
Yeah.
for you guys, listeners and gals out there.
Listeners and gals.
No.
Listener and gal. You know who you are.
You know who you are. Exactly.
How about just listeners in general?
Listeners.
All listeners.
Our listeners.
Listeners and gals.
Women can't hear. They're like bats, right?
That's super hearing.
You're super wrong. That's why we're so critical.
So we do a lot of stupid things. They're fun. We're hoping to put up more blooper episodes and stuff on our Patreon. Those of you who do support us on Patreon, thank you immeasurably. You really help us do what we do and take it seriously.
So spinning off the Patreon thing, we're actually in the process of writing the scripts for our Patreon exclusive miniseries. It is a spin-off series of The White Vault with new characters and is set around something that ties into the universe. But it is going to be Patreon exclusive. Working title's Artifact, and it's not released yet, but you will
We haven't recorded it yet.
You will never get to listen to it if you don't become a patron. Because it's specifically for those people who help us make the worlds that we make.
It's not a thing you have to listen to appreciate the White Vault and future episodes of the White Vault.
It's just a good side story that lets you appreciate more of the world that we've created.
Wait, this Q&A is not a Patreon exclusive?
No, this will be for everybody.
Oh.
This is so that people understand who we are, because we don't do credits, we don't do talking, we want people to be immersed. So this is our, hey guys, between episodes, this is who we are.
So to clarify, we don't have we had the opportunity to
It's
join.
public. People are already hearing your voice. You're fine.
No.
We had the opportunity to join a couple of different networks that are really great out there. We were invited by 2 different networks, 3 actually, to join. But we also have been given sponsorship opportunities. But we felt that, before every episode and after every episode, saying like a lot of other stuff detracted from the primary story. So we have specifically gone far out of our way to avoid sponsorships that required like pre-roll or mid-roll, because that's tough to fit in a story. We also don't do any credits at the end of an episode. It'll be at the end of the season. You'll hear all of our names if you've skipped this episode.
Although if you're looking for the credits section, they're always in the show notes of every episode. So if you want to know who one of the actors or actresses is...
Except on iTunes. We don't put them on iTunes.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's only like 144 characters.
Yeah. But you can find it on our actual...
the Twitter of podcasts?
It is.
iTunes is the biggest one.
Apple Podcasts. Thank you.
It's iTunes.
Also,
I click on my iTunes app to open podcasts, so it's
if you guys are listening to this and you've enjoyed it, I'd also, as the producer of the show, aka I do the sound effects and I email actors and herd them like cats and stuff. But these guys are really great. They don't need to be herded. Please give us a review on either iTunes or Podchaser. Podchaser is a new medium. It is designed exclusively to help you find similar shows that you like using hashtags or recommendations. So if you like audio dramas, which is the sound effects and voices like an audio play, you can simply hit the audio drama hashtag and you'll find over 50 audio dramas that are generally really great quality, the ones that we've listened to so far. Also, hashtag 80podbingo on Twitter. You can find more audio dramas. We do a bingo board every month in different themes. Caitlin does them. They're horror. We did a sci-fi one.
Yeah, just every month on the 20th, I release a new 80pod bingo board so people can try and find podcasts that interest them.
But if you want to help other people find us and you would like to help our show grow and you don't have the financial means to put $1 per episode, we totally understand. That's cool. We do appreciate those of you who can. But putting a review out on iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, or Podchaser really helps boost our visibility within those groups and helps other people find our show. Similarly to us trying to help you find other great content out there, which we of course always love to do.
Go give the QA review. Do it on Podchaser.
Yes, you can actually review individual episodes on Podchaser as well.
Yes, this was a fantastic episode, and then in this episode, my favorite character burped, and I didn't like it.
if you do like these sort of like ghost stories, we can do more interviews as we somehow find the financial means to travel to our other cast members and ask them about their various ghost stories that are local to them, or just around the world, whoever we're able to get in touch with. But we really, truly do appreciate you. We've been overwhelmed by the sheer positivity that we received from the show from day one, pretty much. And even getting a couple of features in a couple places and mentions and articles and lists. That's been fantastic. Thank you all, everyone who's given us a shout out or mentioned us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
You're the best.
Yeah, this is
Especially
us.
you. You're my favorite.
There's
You're gonna fire me?
No.
Live. No.
Taste the tears.
I was just saying that this is our first time as the creators of the White Vault actually speaking out on our podcast to everybody who can listen. So, hi guys. We're real people. We spend a lot of our free time making these things because we actually have full-time jobs. So thanks for listening and making it a smashing success for us and all the download numbers and everything else.
Yeah, so if you enjoy this, keep listening. If you are able to help us out on Patreon, thank you so much. If you're not, please give us a review on Podchaser, iTunes, Apple Podcasts.
And follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
We're very chatty.
All those things. If you reach out on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, you're mostly talking to me.
Yeah, and
directly at me. I mostly respond with GIFs.
Yes, she does.
The superior communication method.
It's optimal, and you can see exactly what expression she has through those
Me
gifs.
saying words does not express the same emotion as Cousin It twirling a cane, okay?
Clearly.
Cousin It twirling a cane says a lot more about what I'm trying to convey.
But seriously, thank you guys.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
I love you.
We'll see you guys at the conclusion of season 1 of The White Vault. Dun.